please. All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for taking time. I know it's very busy times right now. Everybody's got stuff going on, so we appreciate you jumping on. I'm Randy with Technical Training, and it's a pleasure to have you here. Just a little bit of housekeeping. You should have a little Q&A button down at the bottom of your screen. Click on that, and you can go ahead and put your questions in that Q&A. For some reason there's an issue with it, send a note and we'll go ahead and address it. But otherwise, put your questions in there. If you're having problems hearing me, there's an audio button down there. You should be able to make an adjustment. And otherwise, if you are CCA accredited, in that at the end of the session, a survey will pop up, and that once you log off in that or once it ends, and you'll get a survey, and you can go ahead and put your name and CCA number in there, and you can get one soil and water CEU, which is extremely valuable for people with CCA. So that'll be there. We will have a couple of poll questions. Please participate in those when we get to them. And let's go to the next slide. So our session today is really about an overview for weather and planting and weather outlook in general in that. We are going to uh, primarily have Brett Waltz with us from BAMWX, and he will talk about what the outlook looks like through the planting season in the next few months. After that, we will take and have Tyler Roosh address the 2026 Bear Carbon Program and talk a little bit about that. We will take questions at the end. We will try to do those live and go ahead and address those for you. This is your time to ask those questions, so make sure you do that. Next slide, please. Let's go ahead and we'll pull up a poll question for you. And I know Crystal or Jareen, are you doing that? Or do I need to? There it is. Thank you, whoever did that. All right. So, how well do you understand carbon and its effects? Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hold it here. Okay. Let's go ahead and answer that one. How well do you understand carbon and its effects agriculturally? Your choices are very well. Expert level, I know enough and who to call with questions. I could use additional training and resources, or I don't understand carbon. Okay. So we're gonna have this here poll. We're gonna give you a couple more seconds. And then we're going to do the one that's on the screen here in a minute. Okay, we're going to go ahead and end the poll. So, and so about 10% said very well and expert level. About 50% said I know enough and who to call with questions. About 40% said I could use additional training, and then another 5% said I just don't understand this. So we can stop sharing that, and let's leave the other question up here. I think we might have had a hiccup where we didn't have this poll put in. So we're going to do this. Are you familiar with BAMWX? And so what I'd like you to do, there is a chat button also. On the chat button, go ahead and if you're very familiar with it, type in the letter one or the number one. If you're somewhat familiar and have a general understanding, put in number two, and then what is BAMWX? just so we don't insult Brett, don't put a number in for that. And so, but go ahead, put it at three for that, and we'll see what the responses are here. So, okay, so it's great. We're getting a lot of stuff. So, Brett, we're getting twos and threes, okay? And so they have somewhat of an idea and an understanding. They know what weather is. How's that? And so you'll explain to them what BAM WX is when we get to that. All right. We'll go ahead and end that then. Oh, we had a one. We had a one.
I
So
know Steve. Yeah,
do you know Steve?
I know
Okay.
Steve. Yeah.
Did you send him money and that? And yeah. So he's all right. So let's go ahead. We'll go to the next slide. And so it is my pleasure to introduce Brett Waltz. He's our senior meteorologist for BAM-WX, and he is going to give us all of the great information that he knows. So, Brett, handing it over to you.
Yeah, sure. I'll start with a little bit of some background about BAM WX, or what we call it BAM Weather, is what WX stands for. So, BAM Weather, we supply forecasts and consulting, and in this particular case, detailed extended range forecasts for agriculture and other organizations and industries as well, energy and government agencies and transportation agencies and sporting events. And so we cover a wide range of different industries and different organizations across not just the country, but the globe. And in this particular one, we're focusing on obviously agriculture, and we're focusing on extended range forecasting. We house all of these forecasts in an interactive and an advanced platform called Clarity, where we work one on one with professionals and businesses that are making critical, high cost weather related decisions. And we do all of that along with a ton of data meant specifically for agriculture and other industries as well within that Clarity platform. And this is just a little bit of a sneak peek of the type of forecast that I look at on a daily basis, and that we add to that platform. And that is going to be our spring weather outlook, where I'm going to go through here all of the key details weather-wise, weather patterns, potential impacts that we need to look forward to as we work over the next several weeks and the next several months ahead. Some brief background about myself. I've been with BAM Weather for the past 8 years as a senior meteorologist. I grew up just north of Louisville, Kentucky, in southern Indiana, and I attended Indiana University and graduated there in 2017. And I've been with BAM Weather ever since then. With that being said, let me get into the outlook here. I want to start out by looking at what is happening right now. Where are there drought issues? I want to look back to see how things verified last year, because I see some similarities at times, especially in spring, to last year's pattern. And then we will talk about where we are just right now and where we are going over the next couple of weeks. Taking a look here at our verification from last spring, our forecast outlooks are on the bottom. These are outlooks that we put in our platform that we update frequently for our clients to look at to get a general idea of weather patterns, months, and seasons ahead. And our spring outlook from last year, I think overall verified pretty well. Ended up a little bit drier in parts of Iowa and Nebraska, which we mentioned as a risk. Temperatures verified even a little bit warmer, but we generally forecasted a warmer season as a whole for the southern and eastern half of the country. And then the other big story last year was a very active severe weather season, and that verified well. And so these seasonal forecasts, you're never going to be 100% perfect or 100% accurate, but it's really important to be able to pick out these general trends to give an idea of how patterns are going to set up as a whole months to seasons in advance. It helps give us some ideas. Are there going to be issues with planting? Are we going to have plant delays? Are we going to have drought concerns as we head into summer? And we'll talk about some of those risks as we go throughout this forecast. Starting out with drought conditions. This actually updated this morning. We've continued to see some improvement in parts of the Ohio Valley, where there have actually been some excessive rains over the past 30 days. You can see on the right, the green colors on this map on the right side indicate the drought monitor changes over the past 4 weeks. The greens indicate improvement in drought conditions. The yellows and the oranges indicate, unfortunately, worsening drought conditions. And we still have, across the United States overall, a lot of spots that are dealing with drought conditions. Some pockets in Nebraska that are dealing with severe to extreme drought conditions. There's still a narrow corridor in northern parts of Indiana that are dealing with severe to extreme drought conditions. And we've really seen the southern tier of the U.S. expand with drought conditions as well throughout this past winter. If we take a look at the rains, though, where we've seen some of those improvements, the past 30 days, it's been wetter than normal. And so we've been slowly but surely cutting into some of the drought conditions, and specifically across parts of central Illinois, Indiana, through southern Ohio. Precipitation totals have been running 2 to 4 inches wetter than normal over just the past 30 days. And much of the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes have been wetter than normal over the past 30 days. A couple of spots in Indiana and Ohio have received nearly a foot of rainfall over just the past 30 days. That corridor in southeastern Indiana and southwestern Ohio has received anywhere from 8 to 10 inches locally higher in terms of rainfall totals. There have been flooding issues in parts of the lower Ohio Valley. That is something that we'll need to keep an eye on as well as we potentially work back into an active pattern later into March and April. I also want to go back just briefly and review where we were this past winter. It was a colder winter for the eastern half of the country and a relatively snowy winter for the eastern half of the country as well. But the plains and points to the west were mild, and it was a little bit warmer than our initial December, January, February outlook. It was also pretty dry as well. And so again, those drought conditions have not drastically improved in there over the past several months. Taking a look at where we are going ahead over the next 2 weeks, the next 7 days are going to be fairly quiet. Some minor precipitation chances in the plains, the northern plains, and the western Ohio Valley, but your better rainfall opportunities ahead will come in the northeastern United States and into Ohio. And so quieting this pattern down that has been so busy throughout the month of March as we work into the last week of the month should give some opportunities ahead, especially for the middle of the country. For the Dakotas, for Iowa, Nebraska, probably parts of Illinois, Missouri as well, to get out into the fields and get some work done if you need to as we close out March and start out April. But that chart on the right, that map on the right, that is our forecast for the last week of March or so through the start of April. You can start to see those greens showing up, which indicates above normal precipitation. Indiana, Ohio especially, will start to get more active again as we turn through the end of March and we start out the month of April. And so this dry time, take advantage of it while you have the opportunities, because the signals down the road are that the pattern can trend active again. We'll talk more about that here in a moment. In terms of temperatures, pretty consistent pattern ahead. It is going to be extremely hot in the western half of the country ahead. In fact, we are looking at record-breaking heat for several days from the west coast out through the plains. And some of that will bleed into parts of Nebraska and Iowa this weekend. Those are areas that were down in the single digits to start this weekend, will be in the 80s, if not in some spots 90s as we head into the weekend. So an extreme shift in temperatures coming. And with the cold air, all the blues and the greens that you see on these maps to the north, with the cold air still sitting to the north and the warmer air to the south, that is a pattern that is ripe for volatility, especially for the northern plains, the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, and into the Northeast U.S. While you may average out warmer than normal the next 2 weeks, with this type of a setup, there are going to be ups and downs in temperatures. There are going to be a lot of fluctuations. And I think that's important because when you look at several days in the 70s and 80s and it gets so warm, it's easy to forget that when you get a volatile pattern like this, you can have sneaky frost and freeze and hard freeze opportunities. Really, I would say, especially if I can draw here, I believe I can draw in this region, we need to be keeping an eye on ahead. You may average out warmer than normal, But with the fluctuations in temperatures, I don't think we're done by a long shot in terms of frost, freeze, and even potentially some hard freeze potential. Continuing to look at the forecast ahead, this is our outlook as we work into the first 2 weeks of April. It's really more of the same. I do think that there can be the tendency that the core of the warmer than normal temperatures start to shift a little bit further east with time, much above normal temperatures across Texas, Missouri, into parts of Illinois and Indiana. As more of that warmth bleeds further east, and as you deal with the volatile pattern in temperatures, the pattern should get active again. And I think we're above normal from a precipitation standpoint from Northeast Texas through Missouri and through Illinois, Indiana, and Iowa. And so this drier pattern that we've got ahead, I think has a time limit on it. I also suspect that this will come with an uptick in severe weather opportunities. It's been a busy start to the season from a severe weather standpoint. Again, we've got this nice little break coming ahead. But as the pattern gets more active with the warmth that's in place, with the volatility in temperatures, late March and especially into early April, that chart on the left, the orange colors and the red colors indicating above to much above normal severe weather activity from the lower Ohio Valley down through the lower Mississippi River Valley and Texas. The model on the right, that is the CFS forecast model, just basically showing you a heat map of where it thinks severe weather can occur. I suspect it might be a little bit too far west, but nonetheless, it gives support to the idea of an active severe weather pattern into the start of April. I do suspect that as we work towards the back half and especially the back third of April, we can get a little bit of a moderation in the warmer than normal pattern. What we have on the left here is a temperature forecast. General idea, yellows and oranges above normal, blues below normal between the 14th and 19th, perhaps starting to moderate things a little bit. As we work towards the last third of the month, perhaps a cooler pattern. And again, I think that eastern Ohio Valley, Ohio, Michigan, maybe parts of Indiana and into the Northeast, you're not done with frost and freeze risk with the risk to trend a little bit cooler later in April. So while it's warm, while it's going to be warm ahead with the ups and downs and with that type of a signal, I just don't think that we can say that we are done for the season with those colder overnight lows. With all that in mind, I want to get into pattern drivers and more of the extended range forecast beyond April into the end of spring and into the start of summer. The big driver behind the forecast as we work over the next several months and beyond will be a transition from La Nina to El Nino. And that's the charts that I have here. We've been in a La Nina the past 2 years. La Nina, in fact, has been very persistent. It's been 5 of the past 6 years we've been in a La Nina. So this is a substantial change that we're seeing in the oceanic pattern along the equator, which will have a big, big impact on the pattern in the U.S., in my opinion, as we work late the spring into the summer and probably even more so into the fall and into the winter. What we have here, the chart on the right, is a look at the ocean temperatures on the left image, indicating warmer than normal waters, all the oranges that you see developing off the west coast of South America. And then below the surface on this chart on the right, we see a lot of very warm waters below the surface. This is a classic signal for potentially an even stronger El Nino developing as we go throughout this year. Taking a look at some of the model data with the transition from a La Nina to an El Nino, this is the American data forecast on the left. The dashed line indicates the El Nino threshold between 0 and 1. And so we are seeing pretty much every model indicating the development of an El Nino as we head late spring and into the summer months, with many of the models forecasting a moderate to strong El Nino. The stronger the El Nino gets, the bigger the influence on the pattern it will have. The model on the right is the European model. It trended much stronger with the El Nino on the latest run. Some of its members are even indicating a rare super El Nino. I suspect that might be a little bit too aggressive at this time. Regardless, it is a big, big signal for a moderate to strong El Nino as we head into the season ahead. This is a look at our ENSO evolution charts and some of the top years here that match up with 2026 and how we expect to progress. Some key years that I want to keep in the back of our minds ahead: 2002, 2023, And more recently, we have years like 2009, 2004, 1997 as some really more recent years that match up closely to how this year is expected to progress from a weather standpoint. Taking a look at what this typically means, and we're more than halfway through March at this point, but this is kind of a general idea of what these evolutions typically mean for spring as a whole. Not a huge warmth signal. However, you can see how it tends to confine the coldest air to the north. We are already seeing that. We're just filling in further south, the southern two-thirds of the country, a little bit warmer than what the analogs would indicate. From a precipitation standpoint, the signal is certainly active east, and it's drier in the middle of the country. We are already seeing a lot of those themes show up. When you factor in where the warmest water on the planet is, this is where you start to see some of the themes that we are already picking up in March, which is the core of the warmest temperatures in the western half of the country. We've been seeing a lot of that lately, and some drier concerns for parts of the central plains. I suspect this analog may be a little bit too wet down in parts of Texas, but the general idea is still there. The other thing that is happening, and I think this will be a bigger influence as we head into summer, especially, we're seeing a flip in the Pacific Ocean waters and what's happening there. For the past, let's say 5 to 10 years, probably 7 to 10 years, waters off the west coast of the US have been colder than normal. When the waters off the west coast of the US are colder than normal, it makes it harder for the jet stream to transport moisture into the US. It's why the plains have seen such frequent drought concerns over the past several years. We are seeing a shift in this. While I don't think that this is a pattern driver that starts to really have a big impact until we head later into the summer, this would be something that is more favorable for precipitation chances to increase down the road, especially in the plains. In the immediate term, it favors that warmer risk west and some cooler shots of air in the northeast US that can present that late frost risk when you get those northeast cold fronts that we talked about. From a precipitation standpoint, initially, it still favors some slightly drier conditions. But again, I want us to hold on to this particular pattern driver because down the road, it can increase moisture for the plains when we talk about June, July, and August. And let's get into that. Let's get into our overall analogs, our overall outlooks as we look at the forecast ahead. Here was how our top analogs panned out for spring. You can see the clear divide on the left in temperatures with warmth dominating the southern two-thirds of the country and colder air locked to the north. Again, we are already seeing that theme. And especially in precipitation, I'm seeing a lot of this theme. We've seen it throughout March so far. We're seeing it in the April forecast to start out April. Wetter conditions for the eastern ag belt, dry conditions for the plains. It's a concern. That is something we need to watch ahead. There's a lot of heat coming up in the plains. There's drier than normal conditions in the plains. It is a red flag and a little bit of a concern to me if we continue to exacerbate some of those dry conditions as we head throughout spring and potential implications compared to some of the analogs into summer. We'll talk more about that in a moment. March analogs, just to go back and show you how these have done. Again, we're 19 days through March at this point. Here were our top March analogs going into the season. You can see it favored a lot of warmth in general across the US, especially south and east, and it favored a lot of moisture across the Midwest. If we look at where we are month to date for March, we are seeing a lot of those themes show up. And so analogs so far doing a good job depicting how the pattern would evolve. And so what do they ultimately indicate for April? In general, 2025, 2019, 2017, 2014, 04, in the immediate term, the best matching analogs into April. Don't necessarily think that a year like 2019 is perfect, and even 2017 as we head into summer. But in the immediate short term, there are some similarities, and these years combined lean warmer in April overall, but still have that colder air locked in north. And so you can get, when you get cold fronts, you surge some of this colder air down, and you can get sneaky shots of cold air, especially mid to late April. And it's an active type of a pattern look, especially south and east. Some of those browns in here, still leaning a little bit drier, Nebraska, western Iowa, and up into the western plains. Continuing to move along here, May is another one where you see a lot of dryness in the plains. This is where we start to get El Nino forcing to factor in a little bit more. In El Ninos, the core of your heat tends to set up in the western half of the country. We should start to see that show up in May. This can lead to cold shots of air at times and at least seasonable to slightly cooler risks from Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, and points east into May. With this type of a setup, it's not typically very favorable for a lot of moisture in May. And so drier risk continuing for the plains. It's our drought concern in here. I am a little bit concerned with this forecast. If there is a risk beyond this, drought conditions establish, does it make it more and more challenging to get out of that in the plains as we head into summer? This still favors adequate precipitation chances, though, in the eastern portion of the country through Indiana, Ohio, and up the East Coast. Looking at June, what starts to happen as we get into June, the core of the warmth will shift even a little bit further to the north related to El Nino, up into the Pacific Northwest, and you can start to get some moisture opportunities undercut the high pressure and move across the mountain west. You can see that in here. And it can start to bring some relief into the western plains and bring some moisture opportunities. It does lean drier than normal in the upper Midwest into parts of the Ohio Valley, but I would not say it's bone dry. With this type of a setup, you're not dealing with notable heat and you have timely rain opportunities. So I'm not overly concerned about the crop getting really hot and really dry and struggling from that perspective. It's not that hot, and I think that there are enough timely rains in here to prevent major issues for some of the primary Corn Belt regions as we head into the start of summer. Taking a look at our official outlooks and breaking things down here for you all, April matches with our analogs pretty well. I think it's warm across the southern two-thirds and the western half of the country, leaning cooler than normal parts of Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, maybe some sneaky late season wintry weather up there as well. And again, the frost potential, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment as well. In terms of precipitation, leaning active for the eastern portions of the Ag Belt and down through the Mid-South, leaning drier, Nebraska, South Dakota, and into parts of the Mountain West. Heading into May, you can see that clear divide set up with warmth west and cooler air east, drier than normal conditions setting up across the middle of the country, maybe starting to get some moisture to work into the southwestern U.S., and that leads into June, where you can start to set up more of an active pattern in the plains. Now, in my opinion, the risk here with June, pending how things go over the next couple of months, if the drought conditions continue to get worse, the risk is drier in here, in my opinion. Again, we're not dealing with notable heat waves, but I do think that especially, let's say, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, South Dakota, that is a region that needs to be monitored very closely as a risk ahead. From a frost standpoint, based off of our top analogs and everything that we're seeing right now, on the left, I have our final frost outlook versus normal. The further north and east you go, the higher the risk will be to have a later than normal last frost. The further south and west you go, the higher the chances will be to have an earlier than normal last frost. So areas in orange, Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, Texas, parts of Nebraska, probably an earlier than normal last frost this year, but the northern plains, upper Midwest, and into the Northeast, probably going to be a little bit later than normal. And as a reference, you can see when the normal last frost dates are across the United States. That may linger chances for frost into May for the northern plains, the upper Midwest, and especially the northeastern portion of the country. Severe weather. We mentioned March severe weather. That was our March severe weather outlook. That has certainly verified so far. We have had multiple events here in Indiana and Illinois with several tornadoes. We had an EF3 tornado in Michigan. It has been a very busy start to the season already. I do suspect as we head into April, the core of that risk shifts a little bit further south. But in general, remaining busy from a severe weather standpoint in the lower Ohio Valley down through the deep south, I do suspect that as we head into May, while it's not all that active, get a lot of hail events in the southern plains as well as we head into May. I think that's an elevated concern this year. Continuing to go along, let's take a look at summer. What do years that transition from a La Nina into an El Nino mean for summer? Specifically for temperatures, and I want to continue to hone in on this, These do not typically favor big heat. In fact, if anything, El Nino years are more prone to be cooler than normal in summer rather than warmer than normal. From a precipitation standpoint, you see the active pattern start to try to show up across the southern US and down through the Mountain West. Again, the concern to watch is the southern plains based off how things evolved this spring. Keeping an eye on that compared to the analogs. Continuing to move along here with the outlook and some top analogs, the risk right now that I see from an El Nino standpoint is right now we're in more of an eastern based El Nino, which means the warmest waters in that region are near South America. Those years tend to be even a little bit colder and even a little bit more active. You add in years like 1993, 1997, 09, 14. A lot of these years were cooler and had a lot of rain. That is something to keep an eye on as we head into the summer as well. But I think the battle between the dryness setting up in the plains and this type of a signal will be a very interesting one as we head into summer. Factoring all of that in, factoring in the fact that the Pacific Ocean and that shift there tends to allow for more moisture stream into the Mountain West, here is where we landed with top analogs, mixing all of these ideas together because there are some conflicting signals from a precipitation standpoint. But in my opinion, this depicts the idea the best that we can. And it, with time, is getting wetter through here. It probably takes some time, but getting wetter in here, Western Plains, leaning drier in the upper Midwest through the Central Plains, and seasonable to slightly more active in the Ohio Valley. Now, with the lack of notable sustained heat waves and potential for timely rains, I don't think that this is a terribly concerning signal for the broad area, even though it's slightly drier than normal. To me, with this type of a setup, there can be some localized spots that have concerns, but the picture as a whole is okay. It's not terrible. It's probably not perfect, but it's not bad as a whole from a growing perspective this summer. Taking a look at some model data just to support the ideas. This is the multi-model ensemble. It's always going to be biased a little bit too warm, but it does put the core of the warmth in the western half of the country, as we talked about. It's got some of the dryness here, some of the yellow colors that you can see on the map in the northern plains. I don't really agree with its forecast right now in the lower Ohio Valley. We'll keep an eye on that. It does show up some of these greens in the Mountain West, though, like our forecast analogs would indicate. Taking a look here at yields in terms of our top analog years 97, 02, 06, 09, 14, 23 from a weather perspective, both corn and soybeans averaging out these years are right around the trend line. Not a huge signal one way or the other, and most of these years are near the trend line or only slightly above or slightly below. And so not a major red flag there from a yield standpoint for substantially above normal or substantially below normal yields. And going back just one more time, and we'll end here on our outlooks. I really think that if I'm looking at how precipitation trends with time, this area is going to be the area where more active patterns can lean as we go further and further into the upcoming summer. Pending, again, the southern plains, how drought evolves this upcoming spring. That is all that I have for this outlook. I really appreciate all of you all for hopping on and listening to it. More than happy to take a couple of questions on how we expect things to evolve as we work over the next several months.
Hey, thank you, Brett. That was great. And we'll have you click to the next slide, please.
Sure.
Um, there are no questions at this point in time. Folks, go ahead, put those questions in the Q&A, and we'll go ahead and get those answered for you here in a minute or two. Another poll question: are you aware of the Bear Carbon program? So, your choices are very familiar. I'm confident, somewhat, but I'm always here to learn, and that's why I'm here to listen. And I'm in a new role, so I'm not familiar with with the carbon program, and so I need help here. So we're going to give you a few seconds to answer that, and then, like I said, put your questions in the Q&A in that, and we'll make sure we get those answers for you. And Then in a few seconds here, we're gonna hand it over to Tyler, and he's going to give us some information about the carbon program. But give you just a couple more seconds here. All right, we can go ahead and end the poll. So about 10% said they're very familiar and confident. About 60% said somewhat, and about 30% said, you know what, I'm new to this, and so I need information. So with that, Brett, we'll go to the next slide, and Tyler, handing it over to you and inspire us.
Awesome, Randy. Thank you very much. Brett, that was fantastic. I've been here for a year and a half now and didn't know of BAM until I started here with the foreground team. And it's been an amazing journey here, seeing your guys' forecast and seeing how accurate you are. Especially the one that sticks out to me was this winter with the blizzard that was supposed to come across Indiana. Everybody else was dropping their totals, and BAM stayed theirs at seven, or I think it was 13 to 14 inches for where I live in Indiana. And lo and behold, you guys were spot on the whole time for a month and a half out. So I really started following BAM, and it's a great opportunity. Um,
Thank you.
Tying that to the foreground program here, they are one of our partners. So anybody on the call today, if they create an account on the foreground platform, you guys have an opportunity to get a 20% discount with BAM for a year subscription there for that Clarity Ag subscription. So I highly suggest anybody on here that is interested in this BAM to take advantage of that opportunity and use that discount code there to get that year subscription a little cheaper and utilize it this first year to see what it can do for your operation. Next slide, please. So jumping into the Bayer Carbon Program for 2026. So we kind of have two different colors here on the chart here, a dark green and a light green. The dark green are kind of our high priority states we're working in this year. So growers can receive up to $10 an acre for a single practice. So those single practices are no-till, strip-till, and cover crops in those dark green states. And then growers can also have potential to receive up to $20 an acre for a dual practice enrollment in those four states there. So that would be a no-till cover crop, a strip-till cover crop, or within that $20 offering there, we have the potential to receive the reduced till plus a cover crop offering. So reduced till has to be stacked with a cover crop and is not a standalone operation. So that's why we only see it in that $20 offering and not an opportunity for a single pass $10 offering. Then in all other states there we have the light green states. We have a single pass offering for just cover crops, unfortunately. So anybody outside of those dark green states has to have a cover crop on the acre to qualify for the program this year. So if you're solely only doing cover crops or have been doing no-till or strip-till for too long, and cover crops is the newest thing you have adopted on your operation, you can get that $6 an acre. If we are dual stacking there with multi practices, we can get up to $12 an acre. So once again, that would be that no-till cover crop, strip-till cover crop, and that reduced till cover crop opportunity. So those are kind of the values that we can receive there. All of these practices have to have been implemented within the last six to 5 years to be eligible. So we're really looking for new adoption. Growers who are looking to take their operation to the next level and really go along that regenerative ag practices and implementation for their future here. Next slide, please. Oh, there. Sorry. Um, Looking at the Bear Carbon program, I know there's a lot of opportunities out there with sustainability, sustainable ag, and carbon programs. The one thing that really sets the Bear Carbon program apart from other opportunities is our ability to potentially do a historical look back payment. So the practices, first off, had to start, like I said again, within the last 5 to 6 years. So we meet that criteria. Then we also then have the ability to do a historical payment. We can actually back pay growers up to 4 years for the practices that they've already been doing. And that is something very unique that I don't think any other program out there offers. So we can pay growers up to $12 an acre per year for 4 years. So currently, what that would look like would be could pay you for 2012 or 2022, 2023, 2024, and 2025 would be your 4 year look back historical payment. If you would have no-tilled and cover crop for all those years, both sides of the rotation, you could be potentially receive up to $48 an acre for that. And then moving forward within our 5 year contract, you would continue to receive that $12 an acre. So that first year payment with those 4 years and then the current year payment, you could be looking at $60 an acre potentially at that point. And depending on what state you're in, that value could increase even higher. So there's a lot of opportunity for guys and gals that have implemented these practices already recently and really take advantage of those opportunities to bring more value to the farm. With this being a carbon program, we are not stackable on top of any other carbon programs. So that would be considered dual enrolling and would be frowned upon. But we do have the opportunity, since our program is a standalone and privately funded, to stack it on top of state and local funded organizational programs. So the heavy hitters there are basically your local NRCS programs, your EQIP, your CSP that are state and local funded for doing conservation practices and have no ties to the carbon assets that are being sequestered or generated from those fields. So highly encourage any grower that is looking to enroll in a program like this to really look at their local resources to see what kind of funding opportunities there are out there. I know with the current economic state of ag right now, things are challenging. So anything we can do to bring more value back to the farm, I think is a key win right now to bridge this gap we are currently in. So, with that, that's kind of the high level of what our program looks like. Is there any questions or comments from anybody uh, on the call today?
I don't see any right now, Tyler. So folks, go ahead, continue to put your questions into the Q&A in that. So we'll try to get to some of those. Great information and everything. And so, Brett, if you want to go to the next slide, please. So another poll question here. What level of knowledge have you gained about the Bayer Carbon program after completing this training? I understand the program better. I learned a lot, but still have questions, or I prefer more training on this. So we'll let you go ahead and answer that. But um, so while they're answering that, Brett, I know we had a question that came in, and you typed an answer for it, which was great. So, but just to reiterate on it, with increased chances for extreme weather, are we thinking more about tornadoes, hail, and wind, and that? So I'm just going to kind of let you answer that again for everybody live here and kind of share your thoughts.
Yeah, it was a fantastic question because we've really seen all three be issues so far. There was some giant hail in Illinois earlier this month already, which was just crazy, along with tornadoes and big damaging wind events. From what I see as we head into April and where the core of severe weather sets up, I really think tornadoes and wind will be the big deal. Lower Ohio Valley down through the deep south. But I suspect as we transition into May and the corridor for severe weather starts to shift more into the southern plains, I expect hail and wind especially will be a big deal, especially given the dry conditions out there that they've been dealing with that can exacerbate some of the hail and the wind risk as maybe the biggest concern into May.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And we can go ahead and stop the poll. So about 53% said I understand it better, and 40% said I learned a lot but still have questions, and about 7% said I need more training. So a couple more questions are coming in now, which is great, folks. Keep them coming. Do the fires here in Nebraska have any impact on the immediate weather patterns?
Yeah, they should not have an impact on the overall weather pattern. It's really just the culprit or the outcome of the weather pattern that we've been in, which has been the dry conditions.
All right. Another one. Wisconsin is just cover crop now. Strip till standalone isn't paid anymore. I have been a farmer and program more from the beginning. So, Tyler, based on that question, what response do you have?
Yep. If you're a farmer that's already in the program, we have a little bit of flexibility and we can work with you if you're bringing on more acres that are just that single practice outside of those core four states. Unfortunately, if you are a new grower looking to enroll in the program, we are going to have those cover crops. So my suggestion is if you're bringing on more acres and you're already in the program, reach out to me or Andrew or your local CAS and let's have that conversation about bringing on those acres and see what we can do to make that happen for you.
And just because we have a little time here, some of those cover crops that they can use. What do you recommend?
Uh, my recommendation, I'm a huge fan of doing CRI and wheat as my secondary cover crop. CRI is a little bit harder to manage at the start, so you got to be careful. And don't suggest anybody to jump in with both feet and do the whole farm with CRI. I really like wheat because it's a hardy. You get a good stand in the fall, and it's a little bit easier to manage come springtime.
All
If you're
right.
looking for something that's not going to overwinter and you're just going to get some good cover, oats and radishes are my go-to there for something that you want to put out there and not have to worry about what it's going to look like in the spring or going out there and getting it killed.
For those that might not know what CRI stands for, what is that?
Sorry, cereal rye
Oh,
grass.
cereal rye.
Cereal rye
Okay.
grass. Yep.
Okay. All righty. Sounds good. All right. Couple more questions. How long are you required to be in the program once you sign up?
So the program is a 5-year contract. There is a lot of flexibility within that 5 years of the contract. But overall, it is a 5-year contract that we're looking growers to commit to. Like I said, we have that flexibility. If there is a scenario where you lose the farm or no longer going to be the tenant on that ground, we can pull that ground from the contract. If we have a fielder situation where we rut up a field and there's no other way around it, we have to do some tillage or aren't going to get our cover crops out there, we have the flexibility to pause a payment. So we really try to work with growers to make this the most enjoyable and best experience throughout the 5 years of that contract. We understand that things happen and we can control everything that Mother Nature is going to throw at us. So we try to really be accommodating, work with growers throughout that 5 years.
I'll ask this question to both of you. If there are additional questions in that, and Tyler, we'll start with you. If there are additional questions that just rattle off the contacts. I know you are one of them in that, but just rattle off a few contacts that people can go ahead and um, reach out to.
Yep, for sure. I'm actually going to put my contact information right here in the chat for everybody.
Okay, you need to click on everyone instead of sending it just to the
Okay.
hosts and panelists. Okay.
Everyone.
And then why don't you go ahead then at the same time if if others, Andrew, Marie, and people like
Yep.
that, if you have. So while we're doing that, thank you for that. Brett, if they have more questions for you and your organization, how can they reach out to you? Do you prefer them to go through us and then in that, or what's your preference?
I would say whatever their preference is. They're more than welcome to reach out to me for forecast questions, Brett at bamwx.com. For more information in general about BAM, you can go to our website at bamwx.com and we have a form you can fill out and talk to one of our team members.
And we can find out more about Indiana uh, football as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, you can always message me about Indiana football. I'm always happy to talk about that.
All right. Awesome. Folks, if you have other questions, go ahead and uh, quickly throw those in. Otherwise, I see Tyler's put some information in there as well as Brett. So that should help you also to give you that contact information. You can always reach out to our team as well on the technical training team, and we can get in contact as well. Um, with that, I don't see any additional questions in that out there. And so, we will, there's more trainings coming up here in the next week and tomorrow and the next week for those that are able to join those different topics and that, please do. And that otherwise, we'll go ahead and we can wrap this up a little bit early, give you back a few minutes in that. And I just want to say thank you again to Brett and Tyler, and they did a phenomenal job. And we'll look forward to hearing from them again.